If you've spent any amount of time consuming catching content, whether that's here on YouTube, on Instagram, or TikTok, you've at least probably seen the ongoing debate over receiving styles. This is the old school versus the new school way of receiving. If this is new to you, I'll sum it up quickly by explaining it like this. Right around 2019 to 2020, we started to see catchers utilizing these aggressive receiving styles. The amount of glove movement increased a lot. This is right around the time when Instagram Reels started to take off. You started seeing online coaches. TikTok was about at its peak. All of a sudden, we started to see clips of catchers utilizing these aggressive receiving styles. And now catchers of all levels, their coaches, were seeing these catchers using these receiving styles. And it has sparked a debate online as to if this receiving style is actually effective, if it's eyewash. And for the purpose of this video, if a developing catcher should be utilizing such an aggressive receiving style, or if they should stick with the old school receiving style of simply setting the target and minimizing movement in order to receive a pitch. Now, this debate has left a lot of developing catchers, their parents and their coaches, confused as to what is correct. And I have to say there are sound arguments on both sides. In this video, I'm going to cover the 3 core receiving pillars that you need to understand in order to be successful regardless of which receiving style that you choose to use. And I'm also going to give you 3 drills that you can begin practicing today to allow you to see success regardless of which style you ultimately choose to use. Now, the first pillar of receiving is the ability to stay underneath the ball. In order for you to understand this concept, I want you to use your imagination for a second. I want you to imagine the line that a baseball follows as it crosses the zone. A fastball is obviously going to stay straight through the zone. A 2-seam or a changeup is going to fade to my pitcher's arm side. A breaking pitch is going to cut across the plate to my arm side. So if I can understand this line that pitches follow, if I can have an understanding of pitch design, now I can start to think, okay, if I know where that ball is going to go, how do I stay underneath it for as long as possible? Now, I want you to remember this analogy as we will use it to help make sense of receiving pillars 2 and 3. The reason that staying underneath the ball is so important is because of what happens if we get above that line. Let's take a look at this catcher utilizing an old school receiving technique. This catcher starts with his glove relaxed at the bottom of the zone, and on this rep, we can start to see his glove kind of creep up towards the middle of the zone. And then once that ball enters the frame, we can clearly see that this catcher has let his glove work above the line of that baseball. What has to happen now, in order to catch that ball, this catcher has to actively work away from the zone. And when the ball makes contact with his glove, he has to redirect his momentum back towards the strike zone in order to present this pitch where it actually crossed the zone. So if we fail to stay underneath the ball, what's going to end up happening is we're going to be working away from the strike zone. We're going to have to redirect everything in order to accurately present where that pitch crossed the zone. And the more movement away from the zone that we show back here, the less of a strike that it's going to look like for the guy behind us, as well as our pitcher. Both the new school way and the old school way of receiving can be done properly if the catcher can understand they need to stay underneath the ball and then working it back towards the zone. So a really solid drill that we can begin practicing in order to solidify this principle of staying underneath the line of the baseball is our glove on the ground receiving drill. This drill is going to be performed pretty close to exactly how it sounds. Instead of showing a traditional target and utilizing some kind of glove load underneath the zone, we're simply going to start by presetting our glove on the ground somewhere neutral in front of us. As soon as I recognize where that pitch is going to go, I want to be able to start my motion back up through the ball and towards the zone. In order to perform this drill properly, it's going to take a lot of mental discipline to stay underneath the ball for as long as possible and meet it on the way up. A lot of catchers have a tendency to instinctively kind of raise their glove above the zone and then go get the pitch. So by forcing ourselves to stay underneath it for as long as possible, we can hopefully start to get rid of some of those excessive movements in our receiving sequence. Our second receiving principle is the ability to get behind the incoming pitch as soon as possible. Regardless if you use an old school receiving method or a new school receiving method, the principle of getting behind the line of the ball holds constant no matter the style that you use. Our ability to get behind the line of the ball is going to allow us to always be working back towards the strike zone. And also, the earlier that I can get behind that line, the more margin for error that I will have. If my pitcher throws a breaking ball that's going to this side of my body, the sooner that I'm set up to where I think that pitch is going to go, the more time that I'm going to have to make adjustments as I read that pitch coming towards me. Anything that works us away from the zone is considered inefficient. Starting to match that angle that that ball is coming in at is what is going to allow us to present strikes well, no matter where they are across the zone. A really great drill that we can begin to work on to not only get behind the line of the ball as soon as possible, but begin to understand how to match angles back to the zone is a simple deflection drill. So the way this drill works is it's strictly going to be an underhand feed drill. You're gonna have a partner ahead of you, have them go ahead and mix up their pitch locations, but it's going to be at a very light intensity. Once my partner is going ahead and feeding me, all I wanna do is think to preset my pocket directly facing my partner, and then at the instant that ball leaves their hand, I want to do my best to work behind where I believe that ball is going to go, and then I'm going to start to work back through towards the zone. Now, the whole purpose of this drill is at the point where that ball makes contact with my glove. I don't want to secure it, I don't want to catch it, I simply want to try to deflect it back on the exact line that it came from. This is really going to allow us to develop a sense for getting the pocket behind the line of the ball and matching the angle of the ball coming across the zone. The ball does not lie in this drill. If you're deflecting it away from the line that it came in at, it means you're not presenting your pocket early enough and you're not keeping it on your line well enough. Our third receiving principle is the ability to match the angle of the incoming pitch. With this debate of old school versus new school receiving, you'll see that the guys that do each of these styles correctly utilize all three of these pillars, and ultimately they do a very good job of matching the angle that ball traveled across the zone at in order to work back towards the zone. Now, with the new school receiving method, this movement is going to be a little bit more exaggerated, and with the old school receiving method, this is going to be a little bit more minimal in movement, but you can see when it's done correctly, there still is some kind of movement back towards that holographic zone, if you can imagine that. So by understanding how to match angles back to the zone, we'll be able to be successful in both cases. The cleaner that I can stay on that line, the less wasted movement that I can have away from that line is ultimately the smoother that my receiving is going to look and the more strikes that I'm going to get from my pitcher, because the less wasted movement, the cleaner your receiving looks. Now, a bit more advanced drill that we can do in order to solidify this principle of matching angles back to the zone with our receiving is going to be our turned hand receiving drill. So with this drill, we're going to take some inspiration from our glove on the ground receiving, where we're forcing ourselves to stay underneath the ball for as long as possible, but we're going to add in a variable to take the complexity of this drill to that next level and allow us to understand what it means to match angles back to the zone. The way that I'm going to set up for this drill is I'm simply going to relax my glove in front of me, and then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to preset my glove turned back to me to have my pocket almost directly pointing in front of me. So once I'm preset in this position, my partner is going to go ahead and feed either underhand or off of a machine. And now I simply want to work to see the angle of the pitch, and then I want to do my best to match that angle back towards the zone. By turning our hand, it's number one going to give us an easier time getting behind the baseball sooner, and it's going to start to allow for this rhythmic movement where I'm starting to lead with the elbow and allowing my wrist and forearm to kind of snap through to really get that momentum to work through the ball. At the end of the day, regardless if you choose to utilize a new school receiving method, I know a lot of you younger guys want to do this new school way of receiving because it looks cool and it is effective if done correctly. But some guys are, maybe having trouble just simply catching the ball, or maybe you have a coach that doesn't believe in the new school way of catching, which is tough to deal with, and maybe you have to utilize this old school method of receiving. But if you can understand these principles of receiving, if you can understand what makes a good receiver actually be good and make these pitches look good, you can be successful in both ways and ultimately set yourself up for success down the line. All of these drills are examples of drills that I have hosted in my school community. Inside of that community, we have programs for receiving, blocking, and throwing. And these are daily programs designed to, progress you into a high-level receiver, blocker, thrower with daily training plans that you can begin implementing right now. And if you want one-on-one coaching to really take your game to that next level, if you want to work one-on-one with a coach in a remote training program with a program designed exactly to your needs, that is also something that I offer. There's a link to schedule a discovery call also in the description of this video. This will give us an idea of, where you or your catcher is at, what they need help with, and allow us to build out a plan and a coaching structure that's going to be optimal for them and their goals. Go ahead and leave a like on this video, subscribe to the channel for more content like this. And if there's anything you want to see in future videos, always leave comments.